And you are live.
Thank you very much. Good morning, all. I'm sorry I'm between you and the little sunshine we've had in a long time, but that's the way it goes. So we have a long agenda, and I am going to try to move this along as quickly as possible. The board does have a meeting at 12:30, so I hope that we are completed by then. Otherwise, we have to decide what to do at that moment. So, just so you know that that is a time that we are really shooting for. Everyone is here, so I think we can begin with the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. So may I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any amendments to the minutes? All in favor of the minutes as submitted?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The minutes are approved as submitted. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the consent items?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. All right, let's go then to item 3, an action item, which is the alignment and completion of mathematics and English, well known as the ACME policy. May I have a motion to approve the policy?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Now we are open for discussion. This is not new to any of the members of the committee. We've discussed this for a number of times. We actually began this discussion, believe it or not, in 2012, when the board was very new, the deliberations over Public Act 1240. There was a lot of discussion at the legislature at the time, and there was serious opposition to the proposed changes that wanted us to go from a prerequisite to a co-requisite model. Through those discussions, there were a lot of changes in that legislation, and we ended up under PA 140 with a co-requisite model for some students that would have part of it embedded in the actual English or math course, and others were allowed to take one level of developmental education, which many students ended up in. And we also called at that time for multiple measures. The AccuPlacer still continued to be used, but other measures were used by different institutions, and very often the measures varied from institution to institution. Since that time, we've been looking at the model seriously, and in 2017, when we actually began talking about a single college, we also talked about guided pathways. And as part of guided pathways, the ACME model was introduced as an important part of assisting students to move ahead to complete their gateway courses. So since 2017, there have been a number of committees that have worked on the proposal. And last summer, a draft was put together based on that work. It was circulated in November to the general community, and there we received, or I didn't receive, but Greg and Ken received numerous comments and recommendations. They took those recommendations very seriously, and I think if you read the I know you read the report, but I think if you looked at pages 53 to 55 of the staff report, that's 53 and 55 in our agenda, you will see the comments that were made that have been addressed, and they're numerous. And I heard many of those comments too. Kalena arranged for a really interesting time with a number of people from the community colleges who brought up a number of issues. Most of those issues, not all of them, but most of those issues have been addressed in, I think, the draft that's before you today. So I'm going to call on Ken Klutznick to introduce the item and the team. I know Greg is here. Francine worked on it. Francine Rosselli Navarra, Heidi Zenny, Mike Stefanowitz, and Ken Sorrentino. They spent many hours on this, and I want you to hear about their work and how we got to where we are, and then most importantly, where we are right now. So Ken?
Thank you, Chair Harris. And as Chair Harris said, this policy is central to the Board of Regents' Students First policy, which includes the consolidation into Connecticut State Community College, but as part of that consolidation, the implementation of guided pathways. This is the last big policy to come before you as part of the implementation of guided pathways. Just a quick history: in early 2019, as part of the implementation of guided pathways practices, Provost Jane Gage charged a work group to develop a proposal to improve community college students' timely completion of college-level mathematics and English. The proposal you have in front of you represents 2 years of work since that charge. Key to the development of this proposal is a group of colleagues who will speak to the context and key components of the policy and the process to get there. I want to begin, Chair Harris has already introduced them, but I want to begin by repeating that team who has spent countless hours over the last 2 years working on the proposal, and who are here today to present and answer questions about the proposed policy. Fran Rosselli Navarra, Heidi Zenny, Mike Stefanowitz, Kim Sorrentino, Amanda McTaggart, and Greg DeSantis, who will take over now. Greg?
Thank you, Dr. Kluchnik, and thank you, Regents, for having us today. It's good to see you all. I'll be speaking on behalf of this team, along with Mike Stefanowitz, but the full team is here as noted to respond to any questions. So as has been said, the Alignment and Completion of Math and English, or ACME policy before you today is the last guided pathways policy that we expect to bring to this committee. And as Chair Harris noted, in 2017, the board directed not only the merger of the colleges, but also directed the adoption of a full scaling of guided pathways practices as the foundation of the merged college. This is a challenging directive, clearly. It's a massive lift to merge any institutions of higher education, but to simultaneously adopt guided pathways practices and policies is a very big deal, maybe unprecedented. The reason for this board's resolution on guided pathways, of course, is students. It's why any of us are here at all. For the past 3 years, the leads of this ACME work have spent the thousands of hours mentioned collectively reviewing the research, looking at evidence from states around the country, exploring our own Connecticut data and practices, and considering what might work better for our students. This committee heard from Dr. Gretchen Schmidt at a recent meeting, and her message about math and English in Connecticut was clear. The ACME proposal is perhaps the most crucial piece of guided pathways policy this board will see. We can support students with more advisors. We can get students onto an individualized plan with CCS 101. We can help students to organize their choices in the first place into those areas of study. But if we don't ensure that best practices are in place for gateway courses like mathematics and English, we won't see the results we hope for. Students with more supports, who still only have a 1 in 5 chance of ever passing college math and English, are still most likely not going to succeed. So the ACME policy proposal before you today is the last critical piece of the move to guided pathways in Connecticut and the move to greater success for our students. Mike will now tell you about the process that was taken to get here. Mike.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning, Regents and guests. So I'd like to just briefly discuss the timeline and then highlight some of the aspects of the policy for you. As Ken said, this is a culmination of 2 years of work, really which kicked off in May of 2019 after Provost Gates had signed the charge for the ACME group. For those of you who were at the event, you'll remember we met with over 100 people down at Southern Connecticut State University. It was a memorable day because the power went out, and we were unable to show some videos, but we soldiered on and we got through the day. Really what was key at that event was that we had our national partners, who Greg was able to access through the Success Center, both Jobs for the Future and the Dana Center, present and give a broad overview of some of the work that was occurring nationally with English and math and ELL reforms. But also the Dana Center was able to introduce their process, which we were able to access. The Dana Center are nationwide recognized experts with math reform. They also work with English. Really what they did was explain the process that we were going to go through over the next year. They were not giving us the answers. They were helping us find our own answers for much of this work. So we introduced that process. That was in May. After the summer, we regrouped in September of 2019 and actually had 2 events at Manchester Community College where we invited all of the folks relevant on the English, math, ELL, testing, transitional strategies, all of the folks involved in all the areas. And at that event, the Dana Center started taking us through their process. We presented detailed data in our system on success rates, in our developmental sequences, success rates in our gateway courses, disaggregated by college. We shared aggregate data broadly with the whole group, but each college got their own data to look at where we are. Much of this relates to the KPIs, which we're all familiar with, which we've been looking at for the past few years, which identify the success rate of students completing English and math in their first year. And by looking at the data, we really saw that there was room for improvement. And we started looking at different recommendations and models. The process that we used was we asked folks to break into work groups. The group defined their work groups. They identified the work group they wished to work in. And then they started drafting recommendations. We spent a year on that, basically the academic year of 2020-21, working with the groups, having them look at their own data, discuss different recommendations, go back to their colleges, go back to their councils, with a clear deadline of May of 2020 to have those recommendations submitted. And actually, they were submitted before that, and then they were shared with the various groups. But May 2020, they went to the provost team at the system office. And over the summer of 2020 and the fall of 2020, draft policy was crafted with Ken's help and Greg's help and the team's help. Again, both Heidi, Fran, and Kim. And then the drafts of that policy was shared. As Regent Harris said, there was lots of feedback on that policy. There were lots of questions asked about that draft policy, and changes were made to that policy. And then over the past, this semester, right, that policy has continued to be revised and is now in its final proposal form to come forward before you. At last month's meeting, I think you heard from some of our partners, Gretchen Schmidt and also Jeremy from the Dana Center, as to kind of the why we need to do this work and why it's so important. And this is more of the how we anticipate doing it. So that's the general timeline. What I'd like to do is just jump to the staff report, which is page 48, I believe, of your agenda, of the full agenda. And just highlight a few things. I'm not going to walk through the entire policy, but I do want to just talk about some of the goals of the policy and some of the major components. So on page 48, you see that an equity statement. Equity is a really important part of this. As we look at the KPIs, as we look at the data, we know that our developmental sections are majority minority students. That many of our minority students test into those developmental courses based on either AccuPlacer or other measures. And one component of this policy, which is so important, is allowing access to the college level course to all students, but also providing the support that those students need. So again, the policy goals, there's 3 bullets there that you'll see, right? Maximize the probability that each student will enter and complete the gateway level course within 1 year. The national research clearly shows that students that can complete their gateway level English and math course are much more highly successful in their college careers. That's a key benchmark and KPI, and that's why when the original list of 20 or so KPIs was created, that was one of them. Another goal is to minimize the disproportionate impact created through inaccurate placement. We know that AccuPlacer has its faults. There's lots of research out there on that. During the pandemic, we moved to a high school GPA placement for lots of reasons. But one of them was because research was showing that GPA is a better predictor than standardized tests. And we are certainly working through that this year, but finding that to be true. And then also the third goal, to eliminate the completion gap in coursework, English and math, especially for Black and Latinx students compared to white students. You can see I talked through the policy development. I will note that that there was disagreement on some items and that not all changes which were suggested were made in the policy. You know, I think there is a feeling out there that people want to hold on to the prerequisite model in some way, but this policy really expands the co-requisite the most that we can. It talks about metrics in the staff report on page 49, right? You have some graphics which show kind of some of the throughput data. We talk about the PA 1240 tie-in and implications. I do want to just highlight on page 50 the chart from Tennessee Board of Regents, which shows that the co-requisite model really does benefit all students, especially those who test lower on the standardized testing. In the chart on page 50, you see that students with lower ACT scores, which was used in Tennessee, still benefited at a much higher rate from the co-requisite model. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And then if we can just jump ahead, just time permitting, to page 52, I do just kind of want to highlight the key components of the policy. One is that this is a co-requisite model rather than a prerequisite delivery, right? The assumption is that all students are able to complete college level, entry level courses with appropriate support, right? I think when PA 1240 was first envisioned, a lot of folks had concerns because there was a worry that students were being pushed or thrown into college level courses without the needed support. And the support is a crucial element of this policy, that students will get the level of support that they need. Placement measures or multiple measures help determine that level of support, but do not block access to the course. Another key component is mathematics pathways. I think Jeremy spoke to this at the last meeting, but the idea that not all students need advanced algebra based on their career pathway and their chosen program of study. This is a concept that all of the major math professional organizations have supported, the math pathways model. Certainly in some fields like STEM related majors, students will go through a traditional introductory algebra, advanced algebra, pre-calculus sequence. But in many programs, that's not needed. And the algebra, the advanced algebra that's taught is taught in a co-requisite model related to the pathway course. So an example we often use is statistics, right? For folks going into a social science area, really what they're looking for are statistics, not a calculus or pre-calc. And the algebra is different for a statistics higher level course than it is for a calculus course. And then another key component, just the third, is placement based on high school GPA. And again, there's lots of research, and we have links to some of that in the staff report and in the policy that shows the validity of placement based on high school GPA as opposed to a gatekeeper standardized course like an AccuPlacer. We still could use AccuPlacer in some instances or an SAT as a multiple measure or to help determine support, but the primary placement is based on GPA. So I think that's my general summary. The staff report also includes changes made and, you know, I know that many of you have looked through those. But I'll turn it back over to Greg at this point to kind of wrap up our initial presentation, and then the team is happy to answer questions. Greg?
Thanks, Mike. So to take this back to one of the first things that Chair Harris mentioned, one of the things we reviewed in the development of the policy proposal was PA 1240, as Mike mentioned. I'd like to add here in the conclusion that we've worked to ensure that the good results that emerged from PA 1240, where about 4,000 of our students received co-requisite support every year, and those students were twice as likely to complete a gateway course, that those good results from PA 1240 are expanded through this policy proposal. ACME expands the model to ensure that all students receive co-requisite supports. This expansion of the work of PA 1240 is expected to yield more success for minoritized students, more success for students identified as least prepared, more success for all students. That's why we bring this policy before you today. Thank you, Regents.
Why don't we stop at this point and take questions? And I will let we'll decide who should answer the question. Raise your hand if you're the person that's supposed to answer the question. Aviva, first person to ask a question?
Okay, I read the material, but I couldn't find it. Maybe you can help me. In the co-requisite course, as I see it, it's a separate course with its own credits, and apparently we can get into how it's paid for and so forth. But is it a class? Is it multiple people at once relating to the material that was presented in the gateway course? Let's take math, for example. Is it a seminar? I'm more interested in the details, if I can. Maybe you don't have the details yet, but if you have any, I'd love to hear them.
I'm going to turn this over to someone to answer, but the one point we didn't make in this discussion so far is that the faculty is going to be very involved in designing some of those details that you just discussed. That is clear now in the policy, and that was something that faculty has asked for. Fran, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Harris. And good morning, everyone. Yes, I will just follow up on what Dr. Harris said, that the policy gives our faculty complete control over the design of what those supports look like. So Regent Bud, they really could take any of the forms you just described. It could be a seminar, it could be a workshop, it could include additional tutoring. What we have asked the faculty, though, is to make sure whatever they design, it provides what we call just-in-time, right, support, which means that there has to be coordination between what's happening in the college level class and what's happening in that support in that co-rec course, so that the curriculum is actually tied together. Whatever it is students are doing that day in their college level course, they'll get some support for that in the co-rec. And you know, I've been working with the math and the English and the ESL faculty now for a couple of years, and I am very confident just leaving that in their hands. They are brilliant and dedicated professionals, and I know that they're going to design some phenomenal models for us.
Great. That I was hoping that would be the case, because it's like a private tutor. You know, a middle-class family has a kid who's not doing math, they hire a tutor for the exact school. The last question, if you don't mind a second, you mentioned in the report that there has to be some way of not having this cost the students, because it's an extra 3 credits, and obviously it's a course, and it would be an expense for the people least able to afford this. Has there been any development beyond their report on how that's going to get handled?
I can tackle
Again,
that,
yeah, Greg, why don't you take that one?
Sure, and there were some adjustments in the policy, I think, very recently, as in the one that you received last Friday, that make that a little bit more open, so that our hope is that minoritized students, the least prepared students, probably low-income students, don't see the burden of this entirely in terms of the support cost. But we recognize that the college needs to develop a method of ensuring that this is fiscally viable. So that is relatively open in the policy, and just as Dr. Roselli Navarra mentioned, in terms of faculty being able to develop a method of support, the administration of the college, along with the administration of the system, will work to ensure that there's a financially viable but student-focused model for funding it. So that one other thing I'd like to mention here, and it's just a general comment, is there are a couple sections of the policy that detail reports back to this committee and the board in general over subsequent years. So you can expect to hear a lot more about those two questions as this progresses.
Thank you. There's so many things happening at once that I think we need time to make sure we do the funding correctly. There's the PACT program, which is going to be free college for a lot of students. There are changes in Pell Grants, which fund part of what's going on. And there is some money from the legislature that we've had for developmental ed. So it really needs to be done very carefully to make sure that students aren't injured along the way, but yet we pay for it and are able to provide quality support. Mike?
Yeah, Regent Harris, if I could just add to that, one major change that occurred over the past few months was an adjustment in the timeline. And that's related to your comment you just made, which is that, a lot of folks were very uncomfortable with pushing this forward for the opening of the single college in 2023. And that we knew that this design work and that this issue of the cost of the program was of concern. So the timeline, just to refresh everyone, is no earlier than 2023 and no later than 2025. I think this will allow for some pilots of some different support mechanisms. Colleges can currently expand their embedded sections, which was a result of PA 1240, and experiment with that structured support. But I think that's a really important point, that we did adjust the timeline so that we can get this right. Thank you.
The other thing that wasn't mentioned, and I'll call on Holly in a minute, that has really been adjusted from the original proposal that I saw was how DOL is handled. And so I think that work has gone forward, and I think it's right where it should be at this point. Holly.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First, thank you. This has obviously been an extensive project and a lot of work. And so not only having read the report, but also having read some of the comments that we've received, the board has received about the report, I just want to highlight a couple of things or clarify a couple of things. It sounds like a huge data point in your work in the last 2 years has been our own statistics from our pilot of this program, essentially from the co-requisite model. So a characterization that this is based on another system that may not be representative of our student body, that's really not the case from what I'm hearing. You based a lot of the success of this on our own experience with this process. That's my understanding. So is that correct from the research you did?
Does anyone want to comment on?
Sure, that's correct. I'll just start, and then others might want to jump in, but just briefly, that's absolutely right. PA 1240, as we mentioned, is in a way the starting point for this conversation many years ago. So it's an expansion of that, and it's an expansion, as I mentioned, of the success for the students who have been in co-requisite for these past years under PA 1240, that we've seen double the success rates for those students in co-requisite courses. The look at the national work is to expand that and to see states that are ahead of us in this work and states that have moved to full scale, to help answer questions like, does this work for all students when you disaggregate? In particular, does this work for the students that are the least prepared? And as you see in the evidence presented in the materials today, that is the case, that those students see significant gains. So it's a mix of those things. Certainly we want to look at the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of students that are affected by this nationwide. but absolutely looking at the data that's happening here in Connecticut. And we've had good partners in Dr. Bill Gamble's office, including JD Matheson, to look at the data on this over the past few years.
Holly, do you have anything else?
My other question, one of the other feedbacks we've heard was this idea that somehow this is the board taking curriculum decisions away from local faculty. And I know you already spoke to that, but it seems like the proposal goes to great lengths to make sure we articulated that this actually is all about curriculum decisions maintaining at the local level in the hands of the educators doing the teaching. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to that, to make sure that that's also available information.
Sure, and I can, Mike, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, Holly, that's true. You know, the policy in a number of places and in the staff report, we discussed that really what the policy does is set parameters for our students to succeed, and then the development of the curriculum and the design is up to faculty. So, you know, I see this policy much like other policies that the board passes. It's not getting in the weeds or the details of the content of the curriculum or the learning outcomes, but it's setting the broad parameters and then allows the faculty to design within those parameters. So I would agree with each statement. Greg, anything? Yeah.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Regent Cohen?
I just wanted to also say thank you very much to everybody. And I know everybody is a big number. And we appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I wanted to follow up on something that Aviva asked, just to make sure I understand. If when I'm taking the co-requisite or I'm receiving co-requisite services, is it correct? Do I understand it correctly that it may be individual tutoring for me, it may be a group session for Aviva and people like her, so that it's student-centered?
Who would like to take that one? Greg?
Yeah,
or
I can start answering it, and then maybe others can chime in. I mean, I think the key here is structured support, and that phrase is used very intentionally. So students would know when with whatever model is designed, when they register for that course and they're working with an advisor, you know, hopefully a guided pathways advisor, which is another complementary initiative, but they would know what that support is. So that it may be designed to be in another 3 hours of in-class time. It may be taught by a full-time faculty member, or it may be structured tutoring for an extra hour a week. But all students who are in that section of that class, it's envisioned, would receive the same type of support. So there might be different support models designed, but within a section, it would not be differentiated. Really, the key for the multiple measures or the placement is to help determine which students need the most support, which students need less support, and then move them to models that give them what they need, and only what they need. One of I think the drawbacks of the prerequisite model is that students are required to take the entire prerequisite course when they may not need the entire course. They may just need part of the content in that class. So part of that is to be determined, Regent Cohen, but the idea is that it's structured support and it's consistent. The embedded model or the co-requisite model, which we currently have at our 12 colleges under PA 1240, most schools have an English 101, and then there's another extra hour of in-class time. And that varies based on the college on what that extra hour is. Some schools it's an hour, some schools it's an hour and a half, some schools it's 3 hours for some students. So they're actually in an English 101, and then they're in 3 hours of structured support. So the model may vary, but it would be consistent for a section. Do others wish to weigh in, especially faculty members, Fran or Heidi?
Ken has something to
Yeah,
add.
I'll let Ken go
Okay, thank you.
first.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, Regent Cohen, for a section of the policy 14E, Mike has described very well that there's structured supports that are determined by initial placement, but students who are identified as having additional needs after the course commences, and these are students who we might now identify as transitional students, those students will be provided additional services as needed. So there's a constant, that part of the policy says there's a constant assessment of student need with the goal of providing as many supports as needed to maximize that possibility of passing the college level course. So again, that's section 14E in the policy.
Thank you.
And I'll just add to that, that this is really, it's about structured support. It's also about scaffolding supports, right? And that's really what Ken is talking about, that we continually assess where students are in their progress in a class. And then as they might need more, we identify those additional supports that we can provide them.
Last thing on the topic, if I could, is it's also about measurement. That over time, we'll be looking at the results of varying supports for different students, individual students, and seeing in aggregate, what does this look like? What's working well? Where do we need to adjust? So the ongoing structure of the policy, where there are going to be reports to the board annually, means that you'll get to hear more about that as well. What's working and what's not working, and how are we adjusting?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Merle, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Someone, do you have any other questions, Regent Cohen, or should we go to Kalena, has her hand up? Kalena?
Thanks. So just to follow up on this, so it's my understanding, I just want to make sure it's clear to me. So the only supports that are going to be available, though, will be optional. And there is no, according to the policy, I think these two things are excluded: required support and standalone developmental courses. Is that correct? Like the policy specifically excludes those two options.
Say that again, Kalena, I don't.
Can you repeat the last part?
It's my understanding that the policy specifically excludes the option of requiring support and also of standalone developmental courses. So faculty are allowed to sort of develop within those parameters, but those are the specific important parameters of this policy. Is that correct?
In terms of standalone developmental courses, what's well known as prerequisite, that's correct. That the development of prerequisite courses or the continuation of prerequisite courses is not part of this policy. In terms of supports, those supports are optional to students. Students can opt out of those supports in, I think, all cases, if not most cases. The approach we've taken here is a very student-focused approach, but also an approach that recognizes the ability of students rather than their inability to make decisions about this. So students will be offered and strongly recommended into supports, but they may opt not to take advantage of those supports. We may professionally think that that's not the best choice, but we do believe that it should be the student's option to make that determination. I don't know if others have expansion on that in detail or if I've covered that fully.
Well, I really just wanted to make sure that I wasn't misperceiving it, because my actual point was in just to follow up on what Naomi was asking, which is, you know, are we going to be able to provide what students need? And I think one of the worries is that what students might need is more time. And also another thing that we know that sometimes students need is a little bit more structure and encouragement, right? So I think we invested a couple of $1 million in enrolling all of our colleges in the Achieving the Dream effort. And one of the sort of things that you hear in Achieving the Dream is that students don't do optional. So the worry is that in providing what we call optional supports for students who have already struggled at earlier levels of education, it amounts to almost leaving them on their own in a way that is not a sort of nurturing teaching environment, right? And what we are excluding in this policy is the possibility of an instructor requiring any such support, right? So it does seem to me that that is a gap. We're saying that we're able to provide students with whatever they need, but it is possible and that there is a sort of band of students who need a little bit more, and what they need might be time. That seems to be completely excluded by this. That's correct?
I just want to comment on that, and then I'll go over to Greg or to Fran. It appears to me, first of all, that students will not, they are required if they need it, but they can opt out. I mean, that's different. They are put in a section with a faculty member who cares about them, I'm sure, and will try to design the support to meet their needs. But they can opt out, given the fact that some students find that once they get into the support, they really have sort of go back in their memory and are better able to do the work than they thought. But it does depend on the student to opt out. And I really think what we're saying here is we're saying to the students, we have high expectations of you. You can really do this work, and we're going to provide the help to show that you can do it. And this has been shown in a lot of research that high expectations do make a difference in what students can achieve.
So in the national research that supports co-requisite models, which of these studies that we're using as a model, because your co-requisite, just on the sort of intuitive understanding of the term, seems to suggest required, right? That there are two aspects, the support and the course, that are required. It seems that the term isn't being used in that way because we're using research on co-requisite models to support this, which is not required, right? There are no two things that are co-required. So which of the national examples that we have is an example of a state or a system that did this in a way where the support was optional?
You know, states and systems and institutions within those have individual ways of doing this, just like we're proposing here. We want to make sure that that option is open to folks. Let me say this, because I think Chair Harris explained it better than I could hope to, but my expectation is that most students who are offered these supports as a co-requisite offering are going to end up in those supports. It is entirely possible to say to a student who enters, here's the time of your English course. It's these 6 hours. That includes this much support, but here's when you're meeting. And I expect that most students are going to take advantage of that. Some of these adults who are students, you know, when we're thinking about this from an asset model, that students have the ability to make these decisions and determinations about their own success, may choose to opt out, as has been mentioned. We were purposeful in developing this policy to make sure that we weren't forcing students into any of the support options, that wasn't something that we thought was most advantageous for students who have agency and should be able to make their own decisions on these topics. Similarly, I'll mention one other thing in the policy that was brought up regularly. We wanted to make sure that performance in the support, so meaning, did you go to your support section? Did you complete something that someone's expecting you to do, maybe a module or something like that, that those actions didn't affect the grade in the course. One of the things we heard in proposals specifically was, could we develop a policy that allows students to have their grade in the math course or in the English course lowered if they don't complete the support, as a way to incentivize that they complete the support. So imagine that for yourself. Imagine that a student gets a B in their statistics content, that they've completed the outcomes successfully and earned a B grade, but that student stopped going to the support halfway through, and so now they have a C+ instead. We wanted to make sure that that wasn't the way that this was developed, because we don't think that that's student focused. We don't think that that invokes the agency that those students should have. We don't think that that is an asset-minded framework for this work. So in response to that, we tried to make sure that this was a model where faculty and others who are developing this have as much of an option as possible in terms of developing this and encouraging students, and as was said, placing those students directly into those supports. But if students opt out, as is their choice, they're allowed to do so.
I understand your reasoning, but I guess the question was that this is presented as a sort of research-based approach, and we're making quite a drastic change and doing something that on some understandings is actually withdrawing a certain level of support for the students, right? The standalone course for the student who's been out of school for a long time, or the student who works and has a family and doesn't have, you know, double the time to invest in that course that semester. So because what we're actually asking students to do is catch up much faster. Some students are going to be able to rise to that challenge. Maybe even most students, that's what the research seems to show, right? Most students perhaps can rise to that challenge, but there are going to be students who need the extra time, need the extra support, need the extra structure so that, you know, that developmental portion amounts to something like a class and not just tutoring or, you know, optional support. So so the question then is, if this is the way that we're going, do we have any example of this specific sort of approach where developmental is removed entirely and there are only optional supports, none required? Is there anything that we can see as an example that demonstrates the efficacy of this specific approach? And then I'll talk about our statewide data also, because I think we also talked about our experiences within the system, because that's also a different set of students. But I assume that there is an example of this specific sort of approach succeeding, but I don't know which it is. Many of these graphs that were provided don't have any sort of link to the original source of the data, so it's impossible to see the details of the implementation, which has been very difficult. So I've looked up some of them on my own, but I'm not entirely sure that it's the kind of thing that you're talking about. So yeah, what is the, is there a case study? Is there an example of this succeeding?
Kalena, I have a question though of you. Do 100% of the students that take a developmental course complete it right now?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely not.
Well,
Yeah.
The point is, I think that we feel that students will be more successful in this model when you look at the numbers of those that drop out and those that even complete it that never complete the gateway course. So
my point is that it should be based on something more than a feeling, especially when you consider the deep equity issues. We know that in this state, the folks that are served by these developmental courses are more likely to be Black and brown and poor, right? Because this has to do with resource issues at the levels of K through 12, really is what is driving this. So if this has a serious impact, because again, if the perception is that what we are doing is withdrawing what is an appropriate level of support for a specific set of students, right? Specifically the students who are least prepared, right? So we have done this in this state, and our faculty are pretty excited about co-requisite models. We have an ALP model for English. The math faculty are really excited about developing their own and have been doing that. However, the success that we have seen has been a factor of offering the co-requisite model of this to students for whom we believe it's appropriate, right? And then there are students who don't test into that level or whatever, and certainly we need to improve our placement, right? And I know that you're working on that, but there are students who don't get to that level who have not been placed into the co-requisite form of it, right? So I'm afraid that we're either overgeneralizing or we're comparing apples to oranges here. The real question is whether all levels of placement, whether the co-requisite model is appropriate for all levels of placement. I have seen data that was provided that it actually is. I think it was in Tennessee. However, the specifics matter. Were they optional?
You know,
Here's the reason I'm asking this, because I don't teach this stuff, right? This is not my area of specialty, but I do notice that you mention various faculty groups who will be responsible for the development of this policy in the report, and they are CSET, CMAC, ESL Council, PA 1240. And I would include the sort of ACME group that actually developed the report that led to this policy. None of them is here to represent this policy. Why is that? And do we have anyone at this meeting who is currently engaged in teaching students at this level? What is the level of support from those? Because I think we need to take that very seriously. They are the experts. So this is the reason I'm kind of pushing on this, because if we are going to deviate from what the experts in our system would advise, the people who actually teach students at this level, I would like to know that there's actually data to support it. Otherwise, I believe that we are gambling with students who have already been underserved by our state. And as a public system, that is something we absolutely should not do. And it is likely to have deep equity issues. We're going to recreate the inequities that we see at K through 12. Now, again, I understand that is not at all what you aim to do, but feelings, you know, I want to see data, and I've been asking specifically for this data for quite a while now, and it has not been provided. And I think you failed to convince the faculty who do teach this.
Can we give James, did you want to or
Oh,
answer?
okay.
Well,
Good morning, everyone from Southern here. To respond to Dr. Sasinka's question about Tennessee, I'm very familiar with Tristan Denley's work. Prior to leaving Georgia, the University System of Georgia, I was there and then he moved to Tennessee. They rely on intrusive advising. And I think the guided pathways is what we can depend on those advisors to direct those students. But in many cases, if a student chooses in a regular course to opt out of additional work, it isn't, because the co-requisite model does not require in any of them. I mean, it's provided, but it's the intrusive advising that informs the student what he or she needs to do. In all cases, whether it's the co-requisite model, and the same thing is true, I think, with the prerequisite, that's a standalone course. So I think that will make the difference. There is a difference between optional coursework and opting out. Students then are advised and they're informed. And so I recognize and appreciate what you've expressed, because we all have to be very diligent to ensure that our students who are least, I think, progressive and successful in our institution are not in any way harmed in what we do. And all these models, the California model, the Tennessee, all of them we've looked at show that students who were in prerequisite courses fare better in the co-requisite model. So I understand what you're saying. And we also know that students in prerequisites, particularly our Black and Brown students, are the ones whom we failed most. And that is factual across any state, including our own system. So what this has done is move forward an opportunity or the parameters for us to lift those students up into a system. The other thing I will say that's not in this policy that this opting out does is speaks to academic mindset. And I know you're familiar with that, Kalina. It is, this is again what I hear, using the asset approach as opposed to the deficit one. And what it does when we displace students as a result of AccuPlacer and other kinds of standardized tests in courses where they are told from day one that they are not going to be successful or prepared enough. There are lots of folks who are underprepared for different work, but it's how we approach these students, how we onboard them. And in fact, I even heard them say, Ken or Greg, that some institutions, universities, or colleges will pilot. So if you're going to pilot this, then in fact, my question to you is why this remains a concern. We know where we are today, and we are failing those students. So why can't we look at embracing innovative concepts that have worked in California, Tennessee, and there are many other states that have gone to the co-requisites? And this is data. What I can do is certainly, I don't know whether you've seen Tristan Dinley's work. I'll be very happy as soon as I get back to another off the laptop to send it directly to you. And it may answer some of your questions. I don't have it available to send now, and the California work that has gone in far more detail. The other thing you should look at is the recent report from the Connecticut State Department of Education, which shows fewer students from the high schools in Connecticut are enrolling in remedial courses. They are leaving our high schools, and that's that core, common core standard, somewhat better prepared. So there are lots of changes that are ongoing in the state of Connecticut that support looking at a different way of how we provide learning to our students. But so that's all I can offer, the intrusive advising. Thank you, Dr. Harris. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sasenka.
Thank you. And yes, I have seen a lot of that work. And again, you know, with implementation of policy, details that matter. And I'm trying to figure out how the details of those implementations compare with the details of this implementation, right?
Yes.
So yeah. And sorry, there was something else I was going to say. Hold on. Really, look, this is not. I specifically do not feel off the authority to have strong feelings on this, but I do have strong feelings about how my colleagues who actually teach at this level feel. And I think that when you are dealing with this sort of thing, you know, too often we underserve folks, we shortchange folks by looking at spreadsheets and general innovative ideas and not listening to the people who are engaged with them on a day-to-day level. So it causes me some concern that there's a huge disconnect between the folks who have read the studies and the folks who have had the experiences, right? And I do not want to experiment with students who are very much at risk. Now, I am willing to concede to the studies if I can be convinced that the studies can be used as a good basis of evidence for this implementation of the policy. However, I still have not been convinced of that because nothing has been provided to show that this specific, you know, way of doing things will work, right? And continuous with this sort of idea of conceding to the folks who are the people that we hired as, you know, the experts in doing this. I want to just maybe draw attention also to a note about transfer that's in this policy. And what it says is that the universities will accept these courses. And I'm curious about that. How is it possible to determine that without agreement from the universities? I know Southern has made a very strong statement, and Central has recently endorsed that statement, that they are very much against this change. And you know, the premise of this 17 institution system is that we are going to be facilitating transfer between our colleges and universities. So what is to be done if they maintain that position? Because I'm also very concerned about subverting the decisions of an independently accredited university about what they do and do not require for their programs. So that is so two related things, both rooted in conceding to the folks whose responsibility this is.
You know, I think
Merle, you're muted.
Ken should probably cover the transfer question. Can I mention one other thing? Because we've heard years and years of feedback and made, you know, dozens, maybe over 100 adjustments to the policy as a result of being in communication with folks and thinking about how we can make adjustments that strengthen the policy, because we do want that. That's what we're looking for. But I'm going to mention one thing that was said at a forum that we held when we're talking about the idea of transfer and what's expected, and it's that one person mentioned in our system that if you haven't completed a calculus education, then I don't consider you to be an educated person. And that was surprising to us. That's a shocking statement to make, because, you know, there are many people who we'd consider to be very educated who have maybe delved much deeper into statistics or another area of math other than the calculus track itself. And so having a prerequisite on any math course that is in the calculus path is problematic. And I think most of us would agree that that statement doesn't reflect our values of whether or not a student is an educated person, whether a student should be credentialed by our system. And so part of that is a starting point for thinking about whether or not we should, again, think about student agency, whether we should think about the asset mindset model for students and allow them to make decisions about, within the parameters of our program, within those decisions that the faculty are making, how they want to approach their education. In terms of the transfer itself, Ken could probably speak to how a student would get from one of our colleges to universities more clearly.
Thanks, Greg. And it's just a point of clarification. If you look at 12B in the policy, it does not state that these courses will transfer. It simply states that the courses will transfer based on their outcomes and not based on any prerequisite requirement. And it makes it pretty clear that that has to be a negotiation between the community college faculty and the CSU faculty to make sure that the outcomes in the courses align. What it does is it does set a very clear parameter that State University can't say, yes, you meet the outcomes we require in this course, but we're not going to accept it because it does not have an intermediate algebra prerequisite. That's the only parameter here, and the policy is very clear that this is a negotiation just like we do now. Nothing really changes except for that one parameter and how transfer applicability is determined.
Okay.
Fran,
So
Fran, just a minute.
Antonia's had her hand up for a while.
Fran wanted to answer one of your
Oh.
questions earlier. Then I don't know if it's been answered or you want to add to that.
I can speak to the issue of faculty support if the committee is interested, but I'm perfectly fine yielding the floor to Antonia at this point.
Okay. Okay, we'll come back to you. Antonia?
Hi. So I'd just like to take this time to echo the sentiments from Kalena. As a Puerto Rican student myself, I don't feel this is an equitable solution for minoritized students, students marked as least prepared, or for all students. I would also like to echo the sentiments of the Southern Connecticut State University faculty letter we were sent. While I appreciate the work that's been done these past 2 years, I am more aligned against this policy. As mentioned earlier in our meeting, and as mentioned in the Southern Connecticut State University letter, the costs have not been calculated and presented, and the cost of implementation is not mentioned. It was mentioned that students that use the PACT program or Pell Grants for these additional courses, as a student who was never eligible for PACT herself, as I took a few years of a gap between my high school, my GED, and my community college enrollment, and as a Pell Grant recipient myself, I don't feel these additional costs to students are quite fair. The additional course is an additional cost to our minority students, our working students, our students with families, and I'm a student that personally falls into all three of these categories.
Antonia, I don't think we have said that at this point. In the new policy, that's leaving that very open just for that reason. We want to look at the entire picture. And students right now who are placed on the lower on the AccuPlacer, do pay for a developmental course, I believe. Is that
So it was mentioned earlier, I believe it was mentioned by Mr. DeSantis that we have the PACT program and we have the Pell Grants, and that was mentioned. So as a student who currently uses her Pell Grant to go to school, I don't appreciate the additional costs. So that was
Right.
that was the answer when somebody asked previously about the costs. And as I mentioned before, the cost of implementation has not been mentioned, and it's still not been answered, even though the question's been asked several times in this meeting.
That's one of the reasons that we have not set the fee in the policy, I believe, because of that. And again, if a student has to take a prerequisite developmental course right now they are paying for that with Pell Grants. So we are not changing that at all at this point, but we want to look at the whole picture when we have a different way of addressing education. And we agree, we don't want to put the burden on minoritized individuals, but we have to make sure that there's an equitable solution across the board.
I absolutely agree in an equitable solution.
Right.
I don't agree with passing a policy that doesn't have answers to all these questions, though.
That's why the policy doesn't come into effect immediately. We've extended the timeline for a number of reasons. One is to answer the financial question carefully. Two, it's to give a chance for some pilots, perhaps, just the thing that's been raised earlier, to make sure that the best approaches are the approaches that we implement between 2023 and 2025. Nothing has to happen till 2025, but we can pilot along the way and do the research that's necessary.
Absolutely.
Fran, will you answer that? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. So then a point of clarification, are we voting on implementing this policy today or not? Because if we vote yes in implementing this policy and we don't have these answers to these very important questions, even though the studies come at a later date, I don't feel like that's going to be a very good idea.
The problem we have, Antonio, is if we don't start, we can't do the studies. We really need to give ourselves time and annual reporting to make sure that we know what works and doesn't work. I think that's the position that has been taken now with this redraft, giving ourselves time to work this through appropriately. I agree with you. We need more answers on some things, but if you don't start, you can't get the answers. And what we're trying to do is get a starting line because we believe this is the best way to go. And then we will look at it as we move along. Does anyone else want to add to that? Aviva.
Just to be clear, Antonio, I think Merle said, and I would just want to emphasize, if we do nothing, the prerequisite course is already an expense. So this co-requisite course may eliminate that expense, or in fact, reduce it materially if it's only partially charged. So we're going from an expense for a developmental course, which we feel doesn't work, to something that may or may not, we think it's going to be better, and it's not going to be more expensive, and it may well be covered by the legislative allocation to the universities plus other sources. We don't know yet how that's going to work, maybe financial sources and additional aid, I don't know. But we do know it's not going to increase the burden on people that need developmental work. One thing I want to, if I have a chance, Merle, I just want to ask Greg, you mentioned, Merle, the difference between opting out and I think not starting. I read in the material that it's optional, but that isn't so clear. One thing is to say to someone, we recommend you do this. And the other thing is to say, if you don't do this, then we don't think you should be in this course. It isn't, I take it, that kind of position. Opting out means you start, and at some point where you feel you don't need it anymore, or you're doing well, or you can't afford the time, you opt out. Would you explain which way we think we're going?
Yeah, I would echo what Dr. Gates mentioned, that opt-out is different than optional, and opt-out is a great way to think about this. That's my expectation, that this is the direction that it's headed in. Could I add one point of data in addition to that? Because a lot's been said about what exists right now. And one of the very first guided pathways policy that was before the board was the key performance indicators. And what that allowed us to do for the first time was to look not only at the success rates of students overall, but the success rates when we disaggregate by race or ethnicity. So to be clear, since PA 1240, the success rates, so from fall 2013 and onward, the success rates for Black students in terms of whether or not they passed college level math and English with a C or better at that transferable level has never been higher than 14%. When you look at Latinx students, in terms of whether or not they pass math and English in our current model, what's happening right now, that rate is never higher than 20%. The evidence from around the country is clear, and one of the things I encourage our team to always think about is to take Kendi's approach of, is this a racist policy or practice, or is it an anti-racist policy or practice? Not the people, but the policy itself. And if it is anti-racist, we are hopeful that it will move the needle, that more Black students will succeed, that more Latinx students will succeed, and not only succeed, but to close and eliminate the gap of success when you compare Black students to white students or Latinx students to white students. The model we have right now does not work for minoritized students. The model we have right now does not work for the least prepared students, which is predominantly the Black and Latinx students that I've mentioned. The models that have been established around the country that we're looking at, and in our own state in terms of the co-requisite education that's being offered to students, show that those students, those minoritized students, those least prepared students are much more successful. When we feel a move to that is critical.
I want to ask a simple question. I come to you as a student. My SAT scores say I'm not going to do well in math and English. My grades in high school weren't good, but I say, I don't want to be involved with the co-requisite. I don't have time. I want to go right into this college math and English course, separate courses. Can I do it?
Yes.
Can I register and fail?
Yes.
Then the opt-out is not the right description. The optional is the right description, because they don't have to start the prerequisite before they get out. I think I would like to make people start the prerequisite personally. I think then they'll see how good it is and how much help it is and how well they're doing. And Selena kind of made the same kind of comment that people don't know what they're getting into and they don't make the right choices. That's all. That would be my thinking.
If I could just add a point of clarification, Regent Bud, that Provost Gates has already mentioned that that intrusive advising is important. A student can't simply decide not to take the co-rec support. A student has to go through a guided self-placement process that will be designed so that the student gets clear guidance, so that the student clearly understands the potential consequences of that decision. So it's built very much into the policy that if the student's going to do that, the student will not be allowed to register for that college level course without co-rec unless the student has gone through the guided self-placement process.
So there is like a gateway that they have to emotionally get through. Well, we'll see how it works.
Absolutely.
It may or may not work. If it turns out that most students take the course, the co-requisite assistance, then it works. If they don't, then we'll have to revise it. As you say, you keep revisiting this to see how it works. Thank you. I'm satisfied. And by the way, you've done a great job, and it's a huge, huge project.
It is. I just, any other, Regent Cohen, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to say, here we are at the fork in the road. We got to the fork in the road, even with developmental education, when the legislature forced that system on us. And as I recall, we went sort of kicking and screaming. And I, for one, as a board member, was thinking, What do they know about this and why are they doing it? And we were at the time convinced that part of the reason that it was happening was because we were having students use up their entire Pell Grant eligibility on courses that did not count toward completion of their degrees, or continuation of their education. And so, on the assumption that nothing is perfect, I would say that that adopting this policy at this time is the better of the two choices. Because we know, we're talking a lot about values and about data. I have to tell you that my values are not in line with the data that we see about the low completion rates of the people who we've been talking about this morning in terms of ethnicity and race. And we can keep doing that. And we can keep talking about it. But the numbers have not been getting better over the years in terms of completion rates. And it appears to me that in this proposal is the ability of modifications to the proposal, B, the heavy involvement of the faculty who Colina aptly describes as the ones who know what's going on in the classroom, and C, the ability to make changes to policy. But if we don't do anything, we're in the same place and it's only getting worse. So that's why I would support this.
I think we've seen a huge amount of work. I do think that our folks have listened to the people with expertise, because I've seen so many changes in the policy as it has come to us today. Faculty is going to be really involved. It's going to allow for pilots. The timeline for full implementation is until 2025, so that does allow for a lot of tweaking along the way. And it really looks at different supports for different students, this just-in-time kind of assistance. So I know that I listened very carefully when Colina arranged for a meeting with faculty and others with expertise. And a lot of these things have been addressed, not completely, but we still have time to make changes as we move along. But I think we have made a lot of changes based on all of this input. And I'm sure it's been a very difficult experience for everyone on both sides of this question because of that. But by talking to one another, I do believe that we've made progress and we have a product that is really improved. Colina.
Merle? Oh, thank you. Sorry. So I was waiting. So I do have something to say, but I saw Tanya's hand up long before mine. So I was waiting for her to go first. I don't know if you still have a comment.
Yeah, Tanya.
Yeah, some of it was taken care of, but I do want to talk about the lack of a sense of urgency that I keep seeing around these kinds of issues. As a person who's been teaching in developmental English since 1993 and who's done a great deal of research in that work and presented that research way back in 2006, at Manchester and throughout the other community colleges, only to see that work, sort of patted on the head. That's great. That's great. Yes, those are good models. We talked about prerequisite models and acceleration back then, and then sat still until the legislature made us do something about it. So think about that. From 2006 to 2012, we sat with the status quo and did the same old thing while we watched students languish in 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours of developmental English and mathematics, while many of us were going to Washington, D.C., presenting work, listening to work being presented to us at other colleges like Northern Virginia, College of Southern Maryland, and even as recently as attending Amarillo College's conference on accelerated learning, which includes the co-requisite model being done in 8 weeks, not even 16 weeks. So, you know, for us to kind of continue to languish here saying, well, we're doing things okay, knowing that we really are not, to me, it is, you know, it's unethical. It's devastating and it's damaging. I am, you know, an African-American woman who grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, did all the right things, got all A's, got accepted to great universities in spite of having very low SAT scores in English, and then going to that college and learning that I had to be remediated because, you know, I was not well prepared in reading comprehension and vocabulary and those types of areas that were, you know, necessary to be successful in college level. But that remediation was done in a summer bridge program 3 weeks before classes started and in 1 semester. It didn't take, you know, 12 hours for that to happen because there was intrusive advising. There was a culture of caring at that institution where I was. It wasn't just standalone, sit in a classroom for, you know, semester after semester and wander about trying to understand why am I at college if I am not, you know, performing at the college level. So, you know, I sound impatient because I am at this point, right? My own personal, you know, issues were 40 years ago, and we're still having the same conversation about whether or not we need to do something different with developmental education, regardless of, you know, us. I was at the meeting last month and we had experts, you know, here talking about what was being done nationally with developmental education. And, you know, several of the folks on the call kind of, you know, pish tosh, yeah, that might work there, but that's not going to work here. And we've done so much work since PA 1240, you know, and it seems like we're stuck in a rut somewhere where we're believing, you know, moving the needle 1% here or 0.5% there is just fine for Connecticut, knowing that Connecticut historically has these kinds of issues, and I've lived it for, you know, my 50 years of being alive. So I'm concerned that, you know, we're still not ready to move forward in any way, shape, or form towards something that we know has worked with other institutions. And offline, I can give you a great deal more research on where it's worked at other institutions, just because one little thing in the policy I don't agree with, or a half a thing in the policy I don't agree with. I think we should start moving forward fast and furiously to actually get to moving student success metrics throughout our institutions, not just for Black students, not just for Latinx students, but for all students, right? Because most of our students are not completing developmental ed. If we keep measuring Black students against white students instead of saying, hey, we want all 100% of every student group to be successful, then we'll keep going in circles with this conversation for the next 40 years. And then my grandchildren will be in this meeting with the new folks saying the same thing about, wow, we really should move the needle on developmental ed in Connecticut.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for recognizing our Kalina. Do you want to make the last comment, because it's 5 of 11, and I think we need to move forward.
Thanks. And yeah, I'm so glad to hear from you, Tanya, both for your personal experience and the fact that you've taught these courses and looked into these reforms. And so, you know, I hadn't heard much of that in the sense of that specific approach that you have. Though I do want to emphasize that, you know, all of these faculty that I'm kind of hearing from and trying to channel right here are very passionate about the co-requisite approach. They're just not convinced that this is the co-requisite approach that is supported by the data. That's it. But I do want to say this, we are flailing, absolutely. But I think when you see huge inequities across our state, what you see is that they are very much delineated by resources, right? Our K through 12 systems are very, very different, not because they're not held to the same standards, not because they're, but because they don't have the resources to actually implement what they're trying to do successfully. That's what happened with PA 1240. Right, the funding didn't get where it was going, and yes, we are not doing as well as we can. But the very people who are teaching these courses will tell you, if you fund it well, that is what we need. We talk about placement and putting students in the wrong, in courses that hold them back. Well, there are good ways to get away from standardized testing and even just GPA to really sort of to figure out where students belong, but they require, they're labor intensive and they are expensive. And, I want to go back to what Antonia is saying. This all comes down to, we are moving ahead without the funding. So there's no guarantee that it will be anything remotely like private tutoring if we do not have the funding to be sure that this will actually be able to take proper effect. And I love the sentiments of this. I love the intentions of this. I love the fact that we're not charging the students who are taking the developmental courses for the course. We're spreading it out. We're trying to find other sources of funding. That said, this year the governor gave us less than he gave us last year. So where is the confidence that we will be able to get this money? I don't know, right? So if we're moving ahead, the very source of the sorts of inequities is baked into the basis of this plan because it doesn't have the resources to ensure that it will be successful. And Greg, I just want to address the term anti-racism. I think before we start slinging it around, we need to come to some common understanding of what that term means. There has already been an article in the newspaper declaring this college anti-racist in response, immediately after implementing a policy that has within it sentiments that read as assimilationist. And the people that were quoted actually wrote to the board saying this is an assimilationist policy, not anti-racist. So let's please really talk about what anti-racism means. I'm worried that we are being a little too short-sighted because yes, we do want the end result of any policy, if it is anti-racist, to make sure that everyone is equally likely to have access to the same thing. But the end result here, if we think too short term, is not access to the gateway course. The gateway course is valuable because it builds the skills to make students more successful down the line. So if we're giving students access, but not ensuring that they have those skills, we're stunting them forever. And we see this short-term thinking in evidence in the fact that we see the breakdown of the students who enter our doors unprepared, right? Because of that short-term thinking, pass students through, give them access or get them to graduation without actually giving them the kind of education they need. And that is the concern here. If the supports are optional, are we giving them the education that we need? If my instinct is no, that is irrelevant, if there's data to contradict that, but still, I haven't seen the data. So I just want to make sure that that's laid out and I've conveyed what I believe to be, I hope I've represented them well, the sentiments of the very groups that will be asked to develop these courses within parameters that they think are a little bit too narrow. Okay, so sorry for thank you for indulging me, but they're not here, so I'm trying to just make sure this is out there because this is consequential.
I think one thing that's really important, if the gateway course is designed appropriately, any student that passes it should have the requisite skills to go on and succeed. If we don't do that, I agree, we are shortchanging our students, but that is incumbent upon all of us to make sure anyone that passes English 101 with a C or better, because that's generally what you need, does have the skills to for a healthy life and a healthy career. And so I appreciate what you said, but that is incumbent upon the faculty to make sure that that happens. Okay, I'm going to take a vote.
Merle, I'm sorry. Are we allowed to ask this be done via roll call vote?
Pardon? Yes, 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 absolutely. We can,
Okay,
who
thank you.
said that? You would like that? That's sure. That's fine. I do want to make one change, one modification that I caught, and I should have said this earlier in the resolution. On page 46, it says within the first year, I should say within the first year or 24 credits, I believe, to allow for part-time students, correct? So if you could just add in the second whereas, where it says college level math and English within the first year are 24 credits. Because a part-time student may do it in the second or third year and still be within the 24 credits.
As the maker of the motion, Madam Chairman, I will just assume that was a friendly amendment, and I'm happy to have it in the motion.
Okay, does the seconder agree? Okay, Pat, are you on? I was going to ask her to call the roll. I can do it, but it's preferable if she does it.
I can do it as well, Merle.
Okay, as long as there's someone here. Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Why don't you do that? This is a vote on the motion to approve the resolution on page 46 and 47 and the policy that follows.
With your permission, Regent Harris, I'll take the vote on the motion, on the resolution. Regent Harris,
Yes.
Regent Budd,
Yes.
Regent Cohen,
Yes,
Regent Howery,
Yes.
and Student Regent Oglesby.
No.
That is, you have an approved resolution.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to just add that we appreciate the work of everyone who's been spent maybe 5 years or more on this. And I do really want to emphasize the need to keep on reporting and looking at this as we move forward. It's in the report, it's in the policy, and I know that we're going to be able to do that. So thank you so much for all of your time and energy. And that certainly has taken energy. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regents. Have a good day.
Let's move on to the agenda. I have to find the right piece of paper. I have so many pieces of paper here and computer screens both. Okay, we're now on, let me see. Yeah, you don't have the right piece of paper. I lost part of the agenda. Here it is. Okay, we're on the second action item B, which is a continued accreditation of a license program, transition specialist, an official certificate at Central Connecticut State University on page 70 of your agenda. May I have a motion?
so moved.
A second.
Second.
Dr. Kuchnick.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Central Connecticut State University seeks continued accreditation of a program in transition specialist leading to an official certificate. The purpose of the Transition Specialist Official Certificate Program is to prepare baccalaureate professions to prepare post-baccalaureate professionals to promote successful post-school employment and/or education outcomes of youth and young adults with disabilities. Provost Dowald will speak to the proposal and introduce colleagues as needed to elaborate and answer questions.
Thank you. Our presentation will be made by Associate Vice President Megan Fallon.
Thank you very much, Dr. DeWalder, and hello, Regents, this morning. Central Connecticut State University is seeking continued accreditation for its Transition Specialist OCP. And thank you, Dr. Kuchnick, for so beautifully representing the purpose of the program. I want to emphasize that this OCP is fully encapsulated within our Transition and Inclusion Specialization of the MS in Special Education. In other words, all of the courses in this Transition Specialist OCP are required courses or electives within the specialization. Although the OCP can serve as a bridge to the MS, certain jobs prefer candidates with an MS in a related field and a Transition Specialist OCP, which is why it's considered a an attractive kind of credential. And despite not meeting predicted enrollment targets, our OCP is low risk and sustainable because the OCP is encapsulated within our robust MS program. In other words, we can operate the OCP on demand because of the instructional overlap within the MS program. And with us today is Dr. John Fauché, professor and chairperson of the Department of Special Education and Interventions, who is happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Are there questions? Hearing none, I guess we've warned everyone out already. All in favor of the motion to approve the OCP transition specialist award at Central Connecticut State University?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. The next into modifications. There are a number of modifications moving programs at Western Connecticut State University into online delivery. So I'm going to, we'll vote on them separately. And I'll take the motion on the first one, but I think Missy Alexander, the provost at Western, will speak to all of them. So, perhaps we can make brief comments and then move forward to vote on each resolution. The first one is on special education and MS in education. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Okay, a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And then I'll take each motion afterwards, but let's make sure that we do, if there's anything that we comment on them together. Dr. Kushnick.
Thank you, Chair Harris. You anticipated my request to combine the introduction to all four. So I'd like to introduce these next four items together. And as you said, they all involve change in modality. So Western Connecticut State University seeks approval for modification of instructional modality in two master's programs, special education and then literacy and language arts. Both of these will replace the current modality with online. And then two programs that lead to Bachelor of Arts, Interdisciplinary Studies and Communication Studies. And in this case, they will be in addition to the current modality delivery. I think I have that right, Provost Alexander.
Correct.
Provost Alexander, maybe there are some introductory comments you would like to make, and then we can take questions on individual programs.
Sure. So the first two obviously are at the graduate level. And you saw earlier this year, I brought forward moving our master's in education that focused on technology online. Obviously, we've learned a lot during this pandemic. And one of the things that we've learned is that our working teachers seeking additional certification would prefer online options. So we are moving to move these two programs to fully online delivery going forward. And it is no cost to us because we are simply shifting. But we do hope that it actually has a positive impact on our recruiting and even helps us diversify our applicant pool by spreading it out to a larger group.
Finish the business of the meeting. Period. Once that is agreed to.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing some other
Pam,
conversation.
you may, Pam?
Pam, you're unmuted, Pam.
Fixed, okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So those are the two at the graduate level. The two at the undergraduate level, we are looking to support our population of students who are really best categorized as adult learners, returning adult learners to our campus. The Communication Studies degree has for years offered sections of their courses online in addition to on-ground sections. They are ready to move the full degree online as a second option. We have robust enrollments. We have no trouble running those full. In fact, there's requests for them. But the problem we had to solve was our general education offerings in case a student needed to start at the beginning or transfer. So I have worked with my colleagues to develop a fixed rotation of general education courses that will be available in over a 1 year period. So any student who's coming in on this, they won't have as many options. It's a fixed rotation, but they will be guaranteed a gen ed as well. So we would like to move that forward. The final one is the BA in Interdisciplinary Studies, which we moved forward as a degree completion program on ground several years ago. It's been very successful. I think there are approximately 40 majors in there, and it's been serving us well. And students draw together concentrations in 2 areas to build a good and unique degree for them. We would like to expand this to online as well, because we think there's an opportunity to serve some of our students better. We are busy working on putting together specific packages of those concentrations that we can guarantee for them, but this will give us approval to do so if we have the degree ready to go online. I have with me colleagues representing each of these degrees. If there are questions, I can introduce them to you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Okay, I think it's very clear, and I am pleased that you solved the general ed problem right now. I know this has been difficult for a number of our universities, and I think you're the first one that has solved it at the undergraduate level.
Well, we have a plan to get us started. We hope to be able to expand, but this way we're doing it at the most cost-effective level, and people have a promise.
Good, thank you. Okay, the first motion we have is on special ed and MS in education, moving it to an online modality as well. This is just an additional modality.
No, the MS in Ed is switching to online.
Oh, all online. Okay, it's going to be an all online. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Let's have a motion on literacy and language arts and MS in education. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the next interdisciplinary studies, a Bachelor of Arts at Western on page 85. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Let's look at the last one, communication studies, a Bachelor of Arts at Western Connecticut State University, a modification in instructional and delivery. A motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this, and we look forward to seeing enrollment. The next item is criminal justice, public safety, and associate's degree at Naugatuck Valley Community College. And may I have a motion? It's on page 100.
Move. I so move.
Second.
Okay. Ken, when you talk about this, could you speak to kind of a lot of the modifications that are going on at the same time at Naugatuck?
Absolutely, Chair Harris, and that's what I intended to do. In fact, you skipped an item, the criminal justice C2 certificate, but I'd like to include the next 2 items, 4, 5, and 6 together, because they are part of a modification of this criminal justice program at Naugatuck Valley. So with the committee's permission, I'd like to introduce the next 2 items at once. These 2 items are part of Naugatuck Valley Community College's criminal justice program. You have already seen part of these changes in the 4 discontinuations on the consent agenda. And there are 2 more that you will see under new programs later in the agenda. So if we could take these as pairs, modification, and 2 as new programs. Naugatuck Valley Community College seeks approval for modification of 2 programs, one in criminal justice leading to a C2 certificate, and the other in criminal justice public safety leading to an Associate of Science. Dean Justin Moore will speak to these proposals and introduce colleagues to elaborate and answer questions as needed.
Thank you, Ken. Good morning, Regents. Good morning, everyone. So today as a whole, we've got a number of modifications, and as Ken just alluded to, we had a few discontinuations. So this is all a result of our most recent program review undertaken by the criminal justice faculty at Naugatuck Valley. And the certificate itself is being modified to more closely align with the associate's program, so that the credits in the certificate and the credits in the associate's degree, they both apply. So if a student chose to only earn a certificate, or if they decided to continue on into the associate's degree, all of those credits would apply for both programs, or for both credentials, I should say. And we also have here with us today our full-time criminal justice professors, Earl Ormond and Beth Warrener, to answer any questions that you may have related to these modifications.
Are there any questions on the modifications?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
a question.
Aviva, please.
Yeah, reading the materials, and I guess I'm confused by the enrollment information that's put in. I assume that a high enrollment, you say 3 years enrollment completion for the program being modified. The second chart shows a very substantial enrollment. I assume that's for the associate's degree. And the earlier chart was for the certificate, which is like 2 people in the prior course. I understand what the certificate does. It gives them some kind of credential better than just a high school diploma, but it sounds like from the material, it's the very same job. And do you think that with the modification, the certificate is worth pursuing? You'll get more than 2 people a year that are interested in this? I know there's always a cost to every program. I would assume, of course, the teaching cost, the course is there. And I assume the enrollment isn't excessive, although you do have a big enrollment for the criminal justice associate's degree. I would imagine there is some cost related to a certificate that doesn't have much engagement, even administrative cost. You can tell me I'm wrong. I'd like to hear that, because we don't see the costs separately from the criminal justice program.
Well, the certificate and the AS degree, the credits are nearly identical,
Right.
except with the exception of 3 credits of electives. So students in the AS program are taking courses with students in the certificate program. So the enrollments are, so you're not getting courses being taught independently from the associate's courses. So there isn't there's going to be a reduction in cost that's related to the discontinuations that we're going with, because we were ending up with 2 of those discontinued options, where we would end up with very low enrolled courses at the upper level because we had so few students in those. Now we've taken more courses and made them electives in the associate's program, that so that we reduce the chance that there are low enrolled courses at those upper levels in those options. So although the certificate right now shows that there's low enrollment, those students in the AS major are taking those courses and are generally well enrolled.
I understand that, but is there any additional administrative cost for the certificates at all?
No, not at all.
No.
We have the same number. We have 2 full-time faculty, and I believe 4 to 6 adjuncts, and that's not going to change.
Not going to change. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do students who are in the AS degree and find they have to stop out, do they ever go for the certificate just so that they have a credential while they're not enrolled?
Earl, would you like to?
Yes, in most recent couple of years, there's been an emphasis at Naugatuck Valley on getting students to stack. In other words, the goal was to have many of our graduates graduate with an AS degree, and then also have them get their certificates. So that was the hope, was that they'd be almost dual credentialed when they left, have an associate's degree and also have the certificate. And then in the unfortunate situation where maybe a student doesn't complete at least their total requirements for the associate's degree, they'll at least leave with a certificate. So that's why we're making these modifications. We had so many different diverse associate degrees that it was confusing to the students. They take classes by mistake. I was doing too many course substitutions to get them to the associate's degree. Now we're going to have one simplified associate's degree program with lots of electives, and then they can pick their area of specialization with a certificate. And ideally, they leave with an associate's degree and a certificate. So that's the goal of all these modifications globally.
Thank you.
Oh, one more question.
Yeah.
I read where there's transferability into a 4-year program. How do you go from us? I would assume I'm reading it incorrectly, that the certificate would not give you the option to transfer to a 4-year program. You'd have to complete your associate's degree. Am I correct in that?
Beth, you might be more qualified to speak on this, but I believe that the transferability has to do with the TAP program, and that's from the AS degree towards the bachelor's degree, not so much the certificates, I believe.
The AS degree towards the bachelor's, right, but there was something about transferability with a certificate, but that's not correct the way I read it.
No, you read right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
There was, and what something a little later on. Yeah, you're correct. We'll get there. Any other questions on 5 and 6? I need to get a motion on 5 because I skipped it originally. So let's get a motion on 5, which
So moved.
Okay. A second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the C2 certificate at Naugatuck Valley Community College? That's item 5.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Then we do have a motion on 6, which is public safety, the AS. Could I have a vote on the motion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Let's go on to item 7, which is on page 112 of your agenda. It's the change in name from Human Services to Pre-Social Work. No, Human Services Pre-Social Work, just to Human Services at Naugatuck Valley Community College. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Dr. Kuchnick?
Thank you, Chair Harris. Naugatuck Valley Community College seeks approval of a name change for a program in Human Services Pre-Social Work, specifically a name change to Human Services. Dean Moore will speak to this change and introduce colleagues to elaborate and answer questions as needed.
Hi again. So we're asking for a name change today from Human Services Pre-Social Work to just Human Services. And primarily it's because the name doesn't indicate the real transfer or articulation into a social work program at the 4-year school. That would be the social work studies TAP program. So we're just asking to remove that pre-social work part of the name so that it doesn't confuse students and then they end up going into this program when really they should be in the TAP program if they're looking to pursue a BSW at one of the 4-year programs. And we have Professor Kathy LeBlanc here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Thank you for being here, and I don't hear any or see any hands up or hear anyone speaking. So let's vote on the motion to change the name to Human Services. That's the AS degree at Naugatuck Valley Community College. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Let's go to the modification. That's item 8 in digital media production on page 115. This is Associate of Applied Science, AAS at Middlesex Community College. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Dr. Kuchnick?
Thank you, Chair Harris. Middlesex Community College seeks approval for the modification of a program in digital media production leading to an Associate of Applied Science. These proposed modifications include significant changes to the curriculum as well as a change to the name of the program. Dean Mathis will speak to this change and introduce colleagues to elaborate and answer questions as needed.
Good morning, Council. Middlesex would like to present a program modification for our Associates in Applied Science degree in Digital Media Production. This modification is reflective of responses to curriculum, gen ed, content and modality updates, workforce development to meet evolving employment needs, to engage in stronger transfer articulation partnerships with our CSUs, and ultimately to meet the needs of our students, community, and to meet the needs and vision of the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities. This is an interdisciplinary degree providing relevant, practical, and applicable learning experiences for our students. In addition, digital media production program is able to be innovative in its design and implementation due to its foundation of the Center for New Media Production Studios, which provides external contracted services to the community and internal in-kind services to Middlesex, the One College, and system-wide initiatives. As a result, we have also requested a program name change, as noted by Dr. King Kuznick. This program modification will serve as the basis for application for unique program status in the One College. I now introduce Professor Rich Lenosi, who will provide more information regarding the program modification.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. So there are several components to this modification. The first is a name change from digital media production to new media production. All media today is digital, so it's kind of redundant to have that in there. But today we have new media, which is media that as a consumer you can access anywhere, anytime, and on any device. Right now behind me, we're doing a news show out of our studio with CEO Minkler, and it's being streamed over several different platforms. And we also are changing the name to New Media Production, so it's branded along with our Center for New Media and our Center for New Media Productions departments. We modified the curriculum, one, because we had to because of the new gen ed, but with the new gen ed, we were able to move courses around, and we're able in all of our 7 embedded certificate programs to add 3 directed electives, which means students can take more advanced courses that better prepares them for employment. So that's a real benefit because as a 2-year school, you want to be competitive with other graduates, especially ones from 4-year schools, and we can do that with more specialized, more advanced courses. Also prepares them better for transfer. We've been working with Central Connecticut State University on a dual enrollment partnership where students would be in our program would be dual enrolled at Central Connecticut State University as well as in our program, which has a benefit where they could take courses at Central, or certainly when they complete, they will just go to Central. It'll be a complete seamless transfer for them. And so President Toro has been a real proponent of our program and being able to interface with their communications program, which we're very happy about and hope to have that ready for fall 2021. And the update also prepares us for unique program status. I don't know how many of you have ever been to our Center for New Media, but it's a multi-million-dollar communications center with the most advanced classrooms and the most advanced studios and labs, probably at any community college in the country. And that really makes us unique compared to other schools that students are learning on equipment they would say see at ESPN or that they'd see in the workforce, exactly the same. In fact, ESPN helped us design our facilities. So, and we also have a department called Center for New Media Productions, which, as Sherelle pointed out, is a contract service. We have a full-time producer who contracts with Fortune 500 companies, state agencies, as well as the BOR in producing media for them, and we get paid for that. So that makes us unique as well. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions? Wow, it's you have a wonderful center, and we appreciate your availability for many activities across the state in for the Board of Regents, excuse me, as well as for other universities. Okay, let's take a vote on the motion then. That is the modification of the AAS degree at Middlesex Community College. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Item D, there are 4 items underneath item D. They all are modifications of either the C2 certificate or the associate degrees in technologies studies. This is part of the College of Technology. And there are 2 institutions involved, that's Nantucket and Northwestern. We'll vote on them. I think in pairs, perhaps. So both the certificate, unless anyone objects, and the associate's degree. We'll do all of them together, but we'll vote on the 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. Is that okay? Okay, the motion on 1 and 2 then together.
So moved.
Okay. The second?
Second.
Okay. I will ask Dr. Kushner to introduce the item because it is again a replication. We'll take a vote that way, and I'll ask Pat to, if it's unanimous of both times, then I mean on the motion to just repeat it the second time.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Harris. So I'll introduce them all at once. As Nantucket Community College and Northwestern Connecticut Community College each seek approval for the replication of 2 energy management programs currently offered at Tunxus Community College. This proposal is innovative in that it leverages the resources of each campus to provide access to these programs to students at all 3 colleges. I ask Deans Ferrer and Foley to speak to this innovative proposal and to introduce colleagues to elaborate and answer questions as needed.
Thank you, Dr. Klusnick. Good morning, Dr. Harris, Regents Bud, Cohen, Howery, and Oglesby. The Technology Studies Energy Management proposals from both the Nantucket and Northwestern Community College are designed to create a Northwest regional program in energy management by replicating Tunxus Community College's Technology Studies Energy Management AS degree and certificate programs. This would be the first regional program in the CSCU system. This regional effort is to offer the certificate and AS degrees through multiple institutions, as Nantucket and Northwestern in this case, is to expand the applicant pool for a program designed to meet workforce needs at the local, state, and regional level. There's an ongoing need for well-trained individuals in the field of commercial energy management in Connecticut and the larger Northeast region. As of October 2019, Connecticut ranks 6th in the nation for its energy efficiency policies and programs by the American Council for the Energy Efficiency Economy. Connecticut continues to be considered among the leading and trending states and is also noted for the Lamont administration's work towards reducing the state government's carbon footprint. Projects that achieve these efforts typically require pre- and post-construction energy analysis, project management, assistance through mid-level energy analysts as well. These skills in education are directly correlated to the curricula of the Technology Studies Energy Management program. Successful completion of the degree program allows students to transfer to Central Connecticut State University as juniors. ACC and Northwestern present these programs to the BOR ASA committee for approval at this time. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, who will award the degree and the certificate? Is Nantucket and Northwestern or Tunxus?
As Nantucket and Northwestern will be awarding the certificate and the degrees.
Okay.
The students will basically take their gen eds at Nantucket, for example, and their program specific courses, in our case, for Nantucket at Tunxus Community College. And then they can transfer those credits over and complete the degree with us.
Okay.
And it should be noted that, good morning, Regents. It should be noted that Tunxus has worked really hard to make sure that for the energy management courses that were cross college, list, and as much as possible to hybrid or live remote, that type of classes, even though it is, and keep the hands-on component at Tunxus to reduce the amount of time which students would actually have to physically travel to Tunxus for those energy management courses. But we think by this collaboration, again, as Dean Foley mentioned, they can still complete their gen eds, on campus, either Northwestern or as Nuncock, and only have to go to Tunxus for the energy management components that are the hands-on. But because they are cross-college merged, they'll be given certificates or associates from Northwestern.
Right. Okay. That's right. I mean, really, that my question will be moot once there's one college.
Exactly. This is actually, in a way, a Band-Aid until the one college, so that we can help with the regionalizing the enrollment in this program.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. And I want to congratulate you. I heard that you have a new job in the near future. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm glad to be with you. You're not getting rid of me though, because I'll be here.
You're going to be a you're going to be provost at Charter Oak State College.
My pleasure. There's big shoes to fill with Shirley Adams.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for trying to fill them. I hope you're ready for the high heels. Okay. Let's take a motion on 1 and 2. That's at the certificate and the associate at Assunta Community College. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Let's have a motion on Northwestern Community. The same thing. The
So moved.
Okay, Aviva. Yeah. Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, moving right on. I think we may get through this, actually. We'll see. The first item is a new program, addiction studies, an advanced standing program at an MS at Western Connecticut State University on page 186. Dr. Kluchnik.
Do you want to take a motion first, Chair Harris?
Yes, thank you very much. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, you have a motion, a second. Thank you.
Thank you. Western Connecticut State University seeks approval of a new program in Addiction Studies Advanced Standing, leading to a Master's Science. This advanced standing opportunity will offer an accelerated pathway to degree completion for students who have already completed work in Addiction Studies curriculum as undergraduates at Western, as well as for students from the DARC programs in the Connecticut community colleges. Provost Alexander will speak to this proposal and introduce colleagues to elaborate and answer questions as needed.
Thank you. As you all may recall, you approved our Master's in Addiction Studies 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, which has launched and is going very well. We currently have 22 students enrolled in that program, which is well above what we had as our minimums. And we also achieved a large HRSA grant to help support our students in that program. But on reflection, the department chair and the program director came to me to say we have many students in our undergraduate psychology program who complete a certificate in drug and alcohol counseling. And there are students in the community college system that also do. So this is an alternate version of the same program. Students will be in the same classes, but will have a slightly reduced path to completion. Here with me today is Dr. Shane Murphy to ask and answer any questions that you have. But this is our plan to help honor those undergraduate opportunities students took advantage of.
Are there any questions? I did not hear any questions. Then I will say all in favor of the motion to approve the Addiction Studies Advanced Standing MS at Western Connecticut State University.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carries. Thank you very much. Everything should be so easy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is item 2 under new programs, cyber security operations and associate of science at Tunxus Community College, page 201 of the agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is second, Dr. Kluchnik.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Tungus Community College seeks approval of a new program in cybersecurity operations leading to an Associate of Science. This new cybersecurity program at Tungus will provide qualified cybersecurity graduates to the state of Connecticut and help reduce the significant number of unfilled cybersecurity positions. Dean Fest will speak to this proposal and introduce colleagues to elaborate and answer questions as needed.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here today and present this very exciting new degree program for Tungus Community College. We've been looking forward for quite a few years to presenting this to the council, and we were fortunate last year to bring on a new member of our computer science faculty who is an expert in cybersecurity, who is leading the launch of this program. So I would like to turn it over to Professor Gonzalez, who really can present this program much better than I can, as he has many years in the field and has the expertise needed to present the program and answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Good morning, everyone. Tungus Community College respectfully requests the approval of our new cybersecurity operations program. We have conducted a very systematic approach in creating this program. We conducted a situational assessment to make sure that we lined up our program with the current needs in the cybersecurity industry. We assessed all the existing cybersecurity programs across different community colleges and across our universities, state universities. And we created a strategy that allows us to create a program that is lined up to the current needs and that is also taking into account the future of the one college approach that we will be utilizing in the upcoming years. In that regard, I conducted meetings with members of other community colleges to make sure that we created a synergy to align our new program with the future of the one college approach. So the program that you are reviewing right now will be very similar to the one college approach program that we will be presenting to you in the very near future. In addition, the fact that I came from the corporate world allowed me to introduce components of the current needs that are present in cybersecurity in different organizations, not only in the state of Connecticut, but across the US and across the world. And those components are part of the program that we are presenting to you today.
Thank you. Are there questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
You're anticipating a pretty good enrollment here. What have you done to look into this? How do you project it? We've had this lovely projection because it looks like you expect it to be very popular program. You must have had some indication here because most people project 12, 15. You're projecting mid-level, double digits, 40, 50 people. Thanks.
I can take that. So we actually have put several cybersecurity classes as special topics already on our books since Professor Gonzalez has been with us, and have had a very healthy enrollment in those classes. So we have gotten strong feedback from students before the program has even been launched that they are very interested in enrolling in this program. This summer already, we have just one class as a kind of toes in the water for the summer, and it's already has 11 students in it, and the class doesn't start for many weeks. So for not being part of a formal program, to us, that shows really strong student interest.
Is this going to be transferable in a TAP program? Is there a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity that you're looking to?
Yes, I'm going to let Professor Gonzalez take that because he has been working directly on the articulation of the degree.
Thank you, Amy. I had preliminary conversations with faculty members at Western Connecticut State University, specifically the MIS program and the cybersecurity program, and there are synergies that we have been creating throughout the creation of our program that will align with what they are doing for the 4-year degree, MIS and cybersecurity program. So the synergies have been already built with them. We plan to create the same synergies with Central Connecticut State University, the University of Connecticut. However, those discussions haven't taken place yet, but we do see a lot of opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sounds good.
Would these become a TAP program, Ken, at some point, or is it not in that sequence?
I don't know. I mean, TAP programs are usually when there's a very clear pathway, and I think that Professor Gonzalez could respond better than I can to what's available at the four-year level, but I don't know that there's much to transfer into directly into baccalaureate cybersecurity programs at the four-year institutions. If I understand, we're talking about MIS programs or like programs, but I can stand corrected.
So that is an excellent question as well. The cybersecurity industry allows for professionals with certifications, industry certifications, and an associate degree to have opportunities in the labor market. Also, the other path, which is a second path that students can take, is to transfer from an associate's degree to a bachelor's degree in either MIS or cybersecurity. So that is why those discussions were taking that direction with Western Connecticut State University to give students the opportunity to go either with an MIS bachelor's or a cybersecurity degree from a four-year institution. Now, the formal agreements haven't been discussed yet. I believe it is important for us to make sure that we are all on the same page as far as the associate degree that we are about to get approved, hopefully with your blessing, and also once that is in place to have those discussions with the four-year institutions.
And I just want to make one point. Central does have a cybersecurity degree, and they have reached out to me to discuss that direct articulation. And this is through the College of Technology, and the College of Technology has multiple agreements already in place. So I am 100% positive that this cybersecurity degree will fall within those agreements that they already have, that the other community colleges are already aligned with.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, let's take a vote on the motion then, approving the cybersecurity operations associate of science degree at Tunxis Community College. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Let's look at items 3 and 4 together. Again, these are aligned with what we already talked about. I'll take separate motions though, because they have separate titles. The forensic studies C2 certificate at Naugatuck, a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have motion and a second. Let's take a motion and a second on the others, and then we'll vote quickly afterwards. Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay, we have those. Thank you, Dr. Kuchman.
Thank you, Chair Harris. As Chair Harris mentioned, these are the final two requests in the modification to the criminal justice program at Naugatuck Valley. You've already seen one of the certificates in a modification under the program modifications. These are two additional certificates being proposed as new certificates that will fall within the umbrella AS program. And once again, Dean Justin Moore will introduce.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. So with the forensic studies certificate that we're hoping to gain approval for today, it's a robust, has robust enrollment. We had 50 students at last count, 2020. It's replacing the void of the discontinued AS forensics option. So those students, it's very popular. So those students would still continue to have a concentration in forensics. What we've also done with the forensics certificate is we've added an introductory biology course, a 4-credit lab science course, which increases the transferability of those students that wish to go on to a 4-year school to pursue a forensic studies, which generally lies within a science, a school of science or a college of science at the 4-year level. So it improves the transferability. It's financially viable. We have plenty of, it does not require additional administrative costs, additional instructors, or full-time or part-time. And likewise with the second certificate, the law enforcement, we're also filling the void of the discontinued AS option. This one is even more robust in terms of enrollment, where we had at last count over 100 students enrolled in the program. And likewise, there is significant job growth in both areas. So we see these both programs leading to reduced costs for the college, streamlining programs for our students, and helping and improving transferability options for our students. So any questions, please go right ahead.
Yeah. This relates to what I read. What do you mean by transferability option? As a certificate, you're talking about the associate's degree with this specialty certificate adds to the transferability. Okay.
Yes, that's what
what I always read, and I was saying certificate doesn't transfer to anything. Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes,
No,
when
I
we
wonder
combine
where I
the
got that
associates, yeah, we assume the students will earn the associates along with the certificate, so it's the stackable credential.
Okay, any other questions? All right, all in favor of the C2 certificate at Naugatuck Valley Community College in Forensic Studies?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. We have the motion on the next one, law enforcement, a C2 certificate at Naugatuck Valley Community College. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Let's look at the last new program. It's a Bachelor of General Studies, a BGS at Central Connecticut State University, and it appears on page 236.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Dr. Kuchnick.
Thank you, Regent Harris. Central Connecticut State University seeks approval of a new program, Bachelor of General Studies. The proposed Bachelor of General Studies degree will be a pathway for a variety of students, including incoming transfer students, adult learners, and veterans who have accumulated credits at other institutions. The Bachelor of General Studies will also serve students who are stalled in a professional program such as nursing, education, business engineering, athletic training, and are looking to earn a baccalaureate degree. Provost Dowald will speak to this proposal and introduce colleagues to elaborate and answer questions as needed.
Well, I'm pleased to turn this over again to Associate Vice President Mary Ann Fallon, who will make the presentation.
Thank you very much, Provost, and hello again, Regents. As Dr. Klushin has said, we are proposing a Bachelor of General Studies to more flexibly serve many populations of our students. And although there is economic optimism about our recovery post-pandemic, we also know that workers who hold baccalaureate degrees maintain employment at higher rates than those with less formal education during a recession, and that baccalaureate level workers tend to show the greatest employment gains during economic recovery. Consequently, we can think of no better time to offer such opportunity to our students, who are likely to remain in Connecticut and contribute to our local economy. The program is designed to allow students to select a theme, such as people and industry, or to develop their own theme in collaboration with a faculty advisor. The BGS is available to students with at least 60 college-level credits and at least 12 credits in residence. All courses offered at CCSU are applicable to the BGS. Consequently, the primary marginal expenses would be marketing, compensation for the faculty director of the program, and initial training for faculty advisors. We are excited about this opportunity to better serve our students and continue our mission to increase access to quality baccalaureate degree programs. With us today is Dr. Robert Wolf, Dean of the Ammon College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, who is eager to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions?
I have a question.
Aviva, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't see in the material, I assume this would be an online course, that the people would want online courses, because it sounded to me from the materials that this would be very much targeted to the adult population for one reason or another that did not finish degrees in the past and have partial degrees. Am I correct that it is intended or expected to be primarily online courses?
It is at first, it is expected to be primarily on ground, although the students will certainly be able to pursue online courses, and we may pursue a change in modality at a later date.
I see. It would seem to me that at this time in our development, it would, or actually in our financial situation, that a new program that could be served by something like Charter Oak online for adult education completion might be something that Central might want to do in conjunction with Charter Oak instead of incurring the expenses of marketing and other expenses involved. Director, I know there are some expenses here involved. And although the service is very important in today's market to get people to get a degree, because just having a college degree, even if it's your own job, it gives you the opportunity to advance. It's almost like a stigma not having a college degree. And I appreciate that. But what are your thoughts about doing this in a lesser expensive way in cooperation with something like Charter Oak?
Well, so I think what I would say is that we look at this program holistically as a mechanism to assist some students that we already have who are who are attempting to complete very complex pathways toward a degree. And what we hope is that those students will be prepared to either pursue a BGS or, with the kind of intrusive advising that we plan to have, find another degree option that would suit their needs even better. So the larger point here is that we want to make sure that we are providing kind of access and equity for all students. So I do think there are some costs, but they are relatively minimal in the grand scheme of things. We are not looking to spend a great deal of money to make this happen.
It sounded to me like you couldn't fit them in your current programs. In other words, it sounds to me like it's an advising issue rather than creating a new degree. Maybe I'm wrong.
I will also ask Dr. Fallon to jump in, but it is often the case that students pursue a degree such as nursing, which is very complex. And then as they struggle in the nursing program, the alternative pathways are not clear. So for that student, what we would do is look at other options, and perhaps that's a bachelor's degree in psychological science, but it might also be a BGS depending on their particular needs and aptitudes. So we're actually quite proud of the plan here, right? The goal is to make sure that each student has kind of the customized, individualized attention from the university to give them the best pathway possible.
I support your objective 100%. I'm just wondering whether starting another degree is the approach that's necessary right now. That's all. Thank you.
If you look at the enrollment, this is a question that basically builds on what Viva has just said. If you look at the enrollment at the other universities that have programs, it looks like enrollment has gone down across the board significantly since 2014, 2015 to 2018, 2019. So what we're really doing is creating a program where there are already options in the state, and probably no one's going to, everyone's going to have a kind of mediocre enrollment. That's what I was surprised, that you were starting a program when you see the numbers reducing significantly, except at Eastern. Eastern is the only exception.
But I think we assume that some of the market here, right, is individualized to both the region and to the institution. So there's a number of students who have started at Central, and other institutions may or may not be an option. But there are also adult students who are local. And again, it may not be as easy for them to contemplate doing a BGS program at another institution. That would be a kind of a simple response.
And to add to that, many of our pre-professional programs don't necessarily have what we would necessarily call a safety net that would promote timely process or timely progress to degree. So of course students could transfer from nursing into psychological science, but in order to do so, they would be adding time to their degree. And we thought we could serve them better for creating or maximizing the coursework that they had already done and working with them to create a pathway to timely completion. And further, I would point out on page 5 of the proposal, where there is students who apply to graduate but do not complete. At Central, we have seen a large increase of students who have applied to graduate but do not complete for one reason or another, to the point where in 2019 and 20, we had 148 of those students. We would love to be able to capture those students and provide them with a pathway to completion.
Have you explored with Charter Oak whether you could, the degree could still come from Central, but it could, well, I guess it couldn't. I mean, the coursework could come from Central, most of it, but the degree would come from Charter Oak. That would be the difference. Have you explored that at all?
So I guess I would say I have not explored that possibility because part of this has been my focus on CCSU's own retention rate. So that we are hoping that we are responsible for to help them find a pathway out. And Chair Harris, it occurs to me that in response to what you noticed about the trend numbers, we did commission a report from Hanover Research that suggested that there is a nationwide trend of a slight decline in BGS completions nationwide. But I've read that as kind of a market recognition that the BGS is not the ideal path, that it went through sort of a heyday where a lot of people attempted to complete it. But now I think that students are aware that they should attempt to complete a content-based degree if at all possible. I have no doubt that we will have a number of students at Central that would not easily be served by the other institutions in the system.
Actually, Charter Oak does have specific degrees as well, though, as in addition to the BGS, but they take more transfer credit than other institutions, and they allow for other ways of earning that credit. So I think the nursing student that transferred over would be able to do a psychology degree. I think that's one they've approved, and not lose credits and graduate in time with a named degree. Viva, you look like you have a question.
Holly, want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say they also have a robust health management set of degrees as well at Charter Oak. So there are options, but you're right. I mean, it would require them to transfer to a different college and to get the degree from that institution. So I understand the logic. It just, how do we make the best use of all of our resources, right?
One of the other things that concerns me a great deal. Oh, Naomi wanted to say something.
No, go ahead, Viva. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that graduating from psychology is more of a direct source to get a job than with a general studies degree. I can understand somebody who's in a working position that may be hampered from advancement without a college degree. But if you're just graduating and you're going out in the job market without specific skills, I don't think that I personally wouldn't favor a program that had a general studies degree for anybody but an adult or an online student that was working meanwhile and had advanced their career.
Well, I'd like to say that these options are already available to students, but we have not found that these have been necessarily successful directions for them to go. They're not pursuing these. And so we're trying to find a way that we can package what our students have completed to the point where they have reached in their academic careers within all of the challenges that they face in their lives in an institution with which they're familiar, which is CCSU, and try to help them toward completing a degree. And that's really what we're trying to do. And we're trying to do it in a way that doesn't cost an enormous amount of additional resources, but actually pays a lot of attention to the directions that students have chosen to pursue, that maybe they're running into some roadblocks going that way, and we can help them find another pathway through to a degree. So it really is designed really to serve that kind of student population and to provide us an avenue to invite students who have perhaps stopped out to come back to the institution and finish a degree.
Regent Cohen?
If we, just catch me up on the protocols around this. If we approve this degree, when is the next time we look to see if it was successful in terms of enrollment?
7 semesters. That's what the resolution says, I believe.
So that's 3.5 years, essentially. My other question is, do others of our 4-year universities have this bachelor's degree?
Yeah, you can see on the chart.
I lost my chart, so.
Oh, okay, I'll tell you right when I find mine in a minute.
Eastern, Southern.
Western doesn't have this degree, but they have an interdisciplinary studies, which is the one we would.
Right.
And Charter Oak.
Arose by any other name. So, I guess my only ambivalence is if we don't meet, money's money, even though it's not humongous sums of money. If we don't meet the projections, then we're 3.5 years into this before we decide that.
That's correct. As this, but this has been our process to give an institution some time. This is a little different kind of a program, but that's what we have done with new programs.
But there's a very big difficulty in this case because you don't know who dropped out, who finished. You may have existing students that you'll never be able to know whether this made the benefit for what it was directed to. I would support this if you would look into a dual program with Charter Oak, but I would not support this as a new program for Central alone. I think there's so much out there that I think advising the Central students as to what's possible is very important.
Well, I think there are two options. One is we can vote on the motion and see if it passes, and if it doesn't pass, then we have a rejected program. Or we could table the motion, ask Central Connecticut to explore at least working with Charter Oak and see if there are possibilities, and then come back to us with either that option or the original program if it's not possible to work it through. I think those are the options that we have.
I move to table.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Not discussable, I guess.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we have a motion to table, which means that we're asking you to explore this with Charter Oak. If you don't get anywhere in the near future, come back to us through the academic council, I guess, or right back to us, I guess you could, with this program. Is that what everyone? And so you have.
I believe it passed, Madam Chair. We already voted.
Okay. We voted, right. Okay. All right. Okay. I guess we voted. Let's move on to promotion and tenure then. Is that what you're suggesting? Let's go on to page 252 and we will finish in time. These are promotion and tenure options at our 4 universities that are required. They require our actions under contract. Dr. Kuchner.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and I'll just be brief. As you've already stated, the 4 state universities submit their recommendations for tenure and promotion of faculty and staff to the board for approval.
And I need I guess I didn't take a motion. A motion. Okay, second.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? This is always a difficult one because we're voting on something we don't know much about, but we trust our president to make the right decision. I guess that's where we have to leave it at this point in time. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. CSU research grants on page 262. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, a motion and a second. Dr. Kuznick, can you outline the resolution and action?
Thank you, Chair Harris. Article 9 of the collective bargaining agreement between the Board of Regents and the Connecticut State University American Association of University Presidents mandates that funds as set forth in Article 9.10 be allocated for research grants at each of the 4 CSU institutions according to a formula based on their respective numbers of full-time faculty members. This year, the selection committee has recommended that a total of 206 faculty members receive grants totaling $841,676. Its recommendations are contained in the attached roster by CSU institution. The awarding of these grants would not be possible without the work of many colleagues at the universities, but I would like to recognize the work of 4 in particular. It's an enormously heavy lift for them, and that is Brenda Lopez at Central, Amanda Irwin at Eastern, Jennifer Hudson at Southern, and Gabriel Yotovicki at Western. They do an awful lot to coordinate the selection committee's work. And so I make this proposal for approval of these research grants, please.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. The last item, and Dr. Levinson, you've been sitting patiently, is revision to the Connecticut State Community College mission and vision statement on page 284. This is really important because it becomes part of the NETCHI report, I believe.
Yes, it does.
Okay, can I have a motion, please? May I have a motion?
I so moved.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, Dr. Kluchnik, do you want to say anything, or should we just turn it over to Dr. Levinson?
Just a brief introduction, if President Levinson would permit. When
Sure.
the Board of Regents approved the mission and vision for Connecticut State Community College at its March 9th, 2018 meeting, the college had yet to be named. At its May 14th, 2020 meeting, the Board of Regents approved the official name of the single community college, namely Connecticut State Community College. This resolution asks the Board of Regents to approve modification of the mission and vision to incorporate the official name of the college. President Levinson.
Thank you. Thank you, Regent Harris. Yes, the mission and vision remains the same. It has served us really well as we've been cultivating and planning Connecticut State Community College. All this represents, as Ken just said, is a change from Community College of Connecticut to Connecticut State Community College for both the mission and vision. And as Regent Harris said, this is an important change because we will be submitting a progress report to NETCHI on June 1 and would like to include both the name of Connecticut State as part of its mission and vision.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
I was lobbying for Nutmeg State, but I'm voting for this motion anyway.
You can always rename later.
You know, don't even mention that.
I won't.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Interestingly, Nutmeg State, I think, was one of the names considered for Charter many years ago.
Oh, really interesting. Wow.
Yes.
That's for another meeting.
We have a number of informational items. I don't think there's any need to do anything about those, but I want to call those to your attention because the appropriate action will be taken to send them to the Office of Higher Education on the program committees at least. Okay, we've had a marathon session. Yay, did get through in time. We have about 15 minutes for you to take. And I appreciate everyone's work. It was a very full agenda, and we will revisit some of this at the board meeting in about 2 weeks. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ken, for all of your work on all of this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Big fun.
Thanks.
Thank you all, Regents.
Good afternoon.
See you in 15 minutes.
Yep.
Right.